everyone. Welcome back to Friends of Mortgage Heroes. I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
And today we have with us Mike Blair. So welcome, Mike, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you guys don't know this, well, most of you might know, but Mike and Memo and myself have all known each other for quite a long time. We met many years ago, and we also,
unfortunately for Mike,
unfortunately for Mike, and also we know each other in a multitude of different capacities. From even Mike and I being business partners back in the day, so we have a lot of history together personally and professionally. But today we're going to talk to Mike specifically about some things he's doing now that will be interesting to you. But before we go into some of those questions, so, Mike, if everyone is catching up, kind of tell us, what is it you do? Tell us kind of how you got here and what should they know about as a pretext to what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and so I would say I started in real estate in 2017, and so essentially that's what I do now. So from 2017 till now, I've been participating in the real estate industry. I focused on building a real estate team in the last year or so, but prior to that, I started more in the operations and sales kind of role at a real estate organization, and then I participated for a couple years on the investor side of real estate, so working in flipping houses, buying and holding rentals, multifamily, raising money, those kinds of things. And then, like I said earlier this year, kind of transitioned out of those other chapters and kind of started my own real estate team and started some cool things in real estate.
That's pretty cool. I can't believe that. 2017.
Yeah.
It's really been that long already?
Yes.
God,
isn't that crazy?
Because I know there was a time where I used to see you almost every day, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, where's Mike?
Yeah,
where's Mike? He's in real estate. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah. I believe you were part of Team Man's On.
Yeah.
And then you went on from there doing actually investing more in flipping and all that. Tell us more how you got started with all that. Because, I mean, I've known you for so many years, and that's just something I've actually never asked.
Yeah. So originally, I kind of got recruited into real estate. And so I remember,
like most people.
Yeah, like most people, right? Anthony and Reggie, they had reached out to me and asked if I knew somebody that could potentially help them in the operations kind of scaling type of role in their real estate team. And at that time, Andy and I were partners at that time in a different business. And, it was a unique opportunity because I had always had an interest in real estate. My preconceived notion was that, well, you have to be a real estate agent. And then as an agent, you're just on your own selling over and over. God. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. But then when they presented this different type of opportunity, then it caught my attention. God. And so I applied and I worked with them for about 3 years. And I love Anthony and Reggie. We still do a lot of cool stuff together and have fun. But when they decided to change brokerages, it also kind of changed the dynamic of what the role would look like and what I would be potentially doing. And it kind of put me in a spot to where I can choose to stay with them as more of an agent role, which I didn't intend to do in the first place, or I could find my next path.
Wow.
And so after that took place, I looked at some other options. So at that point, I was 3 years in or so as somebody that was a director of sales and operations for a real estate team that was producing at a high level. So I kind of understood and saw a lot of cool things, right? We're doing over $1 million in gross commissions, multiple agents were earning six figures. And so all of those factors, I kind of knew what I was doing at that point. And so when I left that team, I interviewed actually a lot of the other big brokerages and big teams, and I wanted to stay kind of in that role, more of an integrator, operations, kind of growth type of role. And so that was the intention, and I kind of searched around. Luckily, I had made friends of most of the big leaders, like most of us know in San Diego at this point. And they were all really great and good opportunities, and I actually did get offers from some of them. But then ultimately, I reached out to my friend Miguel, and Miguel had a track record of doing a lot of deals. And I remember our team did a deal, and he was the listing agent. Gotcha. And Miguel and I went to high school together. And I reached out to Miguel and I was like, dude, what are you doing? I don't really see you marketing that much or doing that much, but you're doing a lot of deals. And he introduced me to, his cousin who was flipping houses. And ultimately, I felt like that was a unique opportunity because everybody else, most of the other teams, their pitch was the same, right? Yeah. It's, build our agent team, we're going to recruit and train and grow that revenue side. And that was all cool, and I'd done that for 3 years, and yet I kind of wanted something different at that point. So I went that route, and I started basically from the ground up. I literally started as listing their flipped houses, right? And so coming from somebody that actually just got a real estate license.
Wow.
But I've seen
So you're
it done.
pretty fresh.
I've seen
Wow.
it done over and over. And
Yeah.
most people don't know is I spent 3 years next to Anthony Manzon, who every day was prospecting, making calls, going on appointments. So like,
Nice.
it's ingrained in me. I literally sat next to, in my opinion, one of the better real estate agents in San Diego County for 3 years straight.
Wow.
And so that rubs off. You know that.
And that's how you start growing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you start implementing these good habits and you start becoming vocal. I mean, this is a contact sport in real estate.
For sure.
If you're not making those calls, obviously, every day that you're not making those calls and setting an appointment, it's just kind of, in our field, it feels like we failed a day, right? So I'm glad that you actually got that. And, here's a true testament. It's all about who you know, right? Because you met Miguel, you've known Miguel, you're curious to see what happened. And that's what I think what happens in our industry, Mike, is a lot of people don't ask. Even if somebody is doing well, we're kind of like, I don't know if I want to ask because I don't think they have the time. But in this case, you said, hey, I'm already with Anthony. He makes the calls. My friend Miguel, I see him doing things. I'm going to go ask. I'm going for it, and that's it. And so the rest is history, right? So, yeah, it continues telling us.
Yeah,
So
I
this
think-
is a great story, man.
Yeah, so when we transitioned, when I went over to work with Miguel and work with that team, I started listing some of the flipped houses, right? And that's kind of how I got my start. And that I did that at a very low income, right? It was per deal type of income. It wasn't a full listing commission or anything like that because, when you're working with investors, there's margins and, some tightness in some of the things that they're doing. And so I did that, though, because I saw the upside opportunity, right? The upside was, well, number one, I get to list the house. I know how to market this house because I've been next to Anthony for 3 years, so I know how to leverage that opportunity. So even though the income wasn't in the house, it was in the opportunity for future gain.
That's pretty cool.
And so I saw that and I recognized that early on. And so what I did, I just executed, right? I just know how to execute. And so when I started doing that, I ended up selling a lot of houses very quickly. And because we did it well, then it kind of grew into some other opportunities. And so ultimately I ended up kind of as a consulted COO for that company, what we call an integrator. And then we scaled the flipping company a little bit more and, did a bunch of deals and things like that over the couple of year time that I was there.
Yeah, it's something that I have seen of you. You're a great integrator. You're all about running systems, which I love about you. I actually look up to you a lot because I'm so not that, and so I got to learn more off of that. And I'm just glad that I have the opportunity of knowing you and I can do those things. So
yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think for me, I learned years ago that there's really only two ways to scale the business. It's with people or with systems, right? And so those are the only two things that I focus on for the most part, right? Like if you want to handle a lot of transactions, well, you either need more people or you need better systems to handle the volume, right? And those are only two. And so if you look at my real estate organization now, as we generate more leads and do more marketing and increase exposure, well, I need to tighten the systems to handle more volume, but I need more people to handle the volume. And so I only focus on those two things for the most part.
Well, there it is, guys. It's over.
Thanks for joining us.
That's awesome.
Well, and I can imagine that also translates into the flipping process itself. The flipping process. No, let's talk about flipping homes.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that, is it still those same two things? I mean, you have to have the right people, you have to have the right systems. You're talking about investor money, talking about margins, talking about time off the market to get back on the market, acquisition cost versus sales price. So there's a lot of different things. Like, so let's say someone's watching this and they have entertained the idea, like you had at one point, I want to eventually flip a home or hold homes as rental income properties. Like, what are some key things you'd want to tell them, like that maybe you know now that you wish you would have known when you started? And then what things did you take action on that they should also take action on?
Yeah, I would say number one, don't flip houses. No, unless you have thick skin and you're willing to go through the good and the bad times, right?
Correct.
Because fortunately for me, I was in a high volume environment, and so we were flipping at a very high level. I think at the peak in a year we did 120, 130 flips, right?
Wow.
And so when you do that many, you're going to hit some home runs, you're going to hit some base hits, but you're also going to take some losses because of that volume, right?
I'm glad
And
you
so
say that.
You have
That's
to,
important. Okay.
It's always gravy to make 20 grand or 50 grand or $100,000 in a flip, but on the TV shows, what they don't tell you is, you could lose 100 grand on a flip. And so I say, make sure you understand that the game you're getting into, there are pros and cons, and there's some things that we can't control, right? Systems can kind of dial in as much of the activity and much of accountability as possible, but we can't control interest rates sometimes or shifting in the market. And if you take on a big project that's 6 or 12 month type of project, well, none of us know what's going to happen in
That's
6
it.
months or 12 months.
Yeah.
And so it looks great. You could project nicely, and yet you don't know and you can't control all the factors.
But a lot of things change in that amount of time. But on the contrary, the amount of units you've done, I mean, speaks a lot to the experience of, having been there. You don't talk to a lot of people like, oh yeah, we flipped over 100 homes, let alone 120 in a year. Okay, so let's start with the first thing first. First layer: have you flipped 100 homes? Yes or no? No. Okay.
Yeah,
have you done 120 in a year? Even less people say yes to that. So
and I wouldn't say
crazy.
I don't want to take credit for it because I wasn't actually flipping
Well, no,
120,
of
but
course
we
not.
were
we get it, but you were part of
team,
that.
Yeah, for sure. The organization was.
Well, again, people in the system. So the people in the system somehow flipped 120 homes in a year, which is crazy. Is that that was like the peak?
I would say it was probably 120, 130, but in that time frame, there was also a lot of acquisitions of rentals.
Okay,
and so,
got it.
Volume-wise, we were probably exceeded 200
Yeah.
acquisitions right in that calendar
Dude,
year.
what, in that same
Amazing.
window?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I knew that part.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
That's pretty crazy.
And
That's
those are
pretty
still
crazy.
held today. Some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because obviously I'm not in that
Yeah.
company anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to my knowledge,
Wow.
yeah, they're very strong, savvy investors.
What was one of the quickest flips you ever did?
I
Like
mean,
you bought it Friday and you had it on the market Monday. Like
yeah, so I think there's a term called wholetailing that is not as common, right? People know flipping or wholesaling, but wholetailing, I don't even know if it's a real term, but I kind of learned this working
Yeah.
in the investor
yeah,
world.
Yeah, you start bringing your own language there.
And that's basically if you're turning a property and spending essentially less than $10,000 to rehab it and put it back on the market, roughly $10,000. And so there have been cases to where we acquired a deal. Let's call it a Friday. I don't know the exact days, right? Let's say we acquired a deal on Friday, and maybe it was a hoarder house, meaning that it had a lot of trash and furniture and junk and whatever in the house. And then we go into the house, and then we clear that all out, and then the house is actually pretty good, right? But we couldn't see that.
You just couldn't see it.
Most people couldn't see the vision of the house because it was cluttered.
Right.
And so by the time we got all the stuff out, it was actually in good shape. We threw a cleaner in there and we put it back on the market.
Yeah.
And so there was a few cases to where we spent far less than $10,000. Maybe it was paint, maybe it was cleanup, maybe it was demo or trash out, and yet we didn't have to spend $10, $20, $50, $100,000 to flip the house.
Wow.
It was $1,000 or
Dang.
$2,000 because we discovered that the condition of the house is
That's good.
actually retail ready for the most part. It's not
that's
it's not
crazy.
fully remodeled, and yet it's the normal house in that neighborhood.
So okay, that seems like a rare more than common. Is that true to say that? I know it's kind of
I would
maybe
say it happens
vague.
a few times a year when we
Okay.
were doing that at that
was
volume.
that way?
I would say this year I did one that was almost kind of in that category. It was about a $20,000 rehab. So we acquired it in about 30 days. It was back on the market.
So what do you
Probably
have?
less
quick.
than 30 days, 20 something days.
So what do you call that one? Like somewhat quick tail?
right.
Drive through.
Yeah, it's not a term for that one.
Drive through home flip. I don't know.
It's in the in between of a whole tail and a flip, meaning that
Nice.
we didn't flip the whole house, right?
Yeah.
That house had some good components to it, so we left those good components,
Yeah.
and so we only cosmetically updated the things that maybe would make it look fresher.
I seem to remember at one point in a completely separate conversation, you had mentioned something about how there was some systematic approach to design where the houses would get a certain type of faucet or certain color schemes, and that was done on purpose. Number one, because you knew the pricing, you knew the accessibility, the availability of the products, and then you had a kind of an overall feel that you just were comfortable with. That correct? Am I remembering all that
I
correct?
still use that today.
You still use that?
We
Okay.
basically have, the way that I have it is on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We basically have a whole product list of essentially a whole house, right? Flooring, paint, faucets, sinks, countertops, light fixtures, all of those things. It's a whole list of everything, every component. And then next to it is a link to wherever you can buy that. Most of it is either Home Depot or Lowe's or Amazon. And then next to it has the price point. And so if we know that we're going into a house that has X amount of square feet, we know exactly how much flooring we need.
Right.
But we already know what floor we're using. We already know the cost,
all
and you can already estimate what that floor cost is going to be. So it makes it really easy. And then the Home Depot thing really helps because if you have a pro account, you can order most of that stuff online. You can either have it shipped or you could pick it up. Like they'll kind of sort it all for
Yeah.
you, pick it all for you, and have it ready to go.
That's pretty awesome.
Hey, these are some really high value tips for those people watching right now. It's like, hey, I think I want to flip a house. Like, listen to all this right now. Hit the double tap on the reverse on there. Get yourself back to where Mike started this point. But so spreadsheet number 1, get a spreadsheet. Number 2, know your prices, know your products, pick them in advance. Was there a process to refining that, or were you like, no, we're going to do this? Like, I have to imagine it took a while to come up with kind of here's the list, the batch of things we're willing to use and which ones we're not.
Well, here's the thing with Mike of what I've seen. He's an integrator.
Yeah.
He likes systems, you know, he likes to have his systems in place. You know, so I really feel that that's what makes you stand out and more successful than, you know, others, because you're paying attention to the small little details. And those are small little details. By having all that information readily available when you see a property, you could already visualize and know what's going to be, you know, installing those properties. A lot of times it could get complicated when you're trying to get too creative, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It adds up.
Yeah. For us, we try to take a lot of the guessing out, right? And the guessing for us as the flipper or for the designer or the contractor, we try to take the guessing out, which narrows down the level of mistakes, right? So when somebody has to trust somebody else to pick the tile, right? If you go to Home Depot or even you go to a tile place, there's 1,000 tiles, right? And so it's like, well, instead of doing all that, this is the tile, so just go pick it up.
Yeah.
This is the grout color, right? The grout color is, believe it or not, sometimes it's embarrassing because they'll use the wrong grout color in the tile. So we have to name, this is the grout and the grout color, and these are how many boxes you need based on how much tile you need.
Wow.
Right?
So limiting all the guesswork and potential fail points along the way.
Yeah.
I have a big grin and smile on my face because my mother-in-law's property that we pretty much remodeled, did everything. I go, hey, the color exterior looks like mine. I'm gonna make it the same because it was easy and it looks good, you know. And so I painted the same, you know, and the garage, everything's the same. So you kind of look at my house that way. It's like the miniature me. Inside is different, but I used colors that I felt were going to be, it's going to kind of go with everything.
Yeah.
And so I love the way it looked over there. And guess what I did here in this office?
Oh, look, it's appealing everywhere.
There you go, literally. But, you know, you mentioning that it takes a lot of risk out of that. You mentioned that earlier. There's risk, there's rewards with it. You know, and I'm glad that you mentioned the risk factor because there's so many people, so many TikTokers out there that flip your home, you're going to make $100,000, right? And it makes it so easy, Mike. Is that is that true? Like, you agree with this, or what's your take on?
It can be easy, right? Obviously, when we were doing 120, we made it look easy, right?
Yeah.
But there is a lot of logistical dynamics that are involved, right? Especially not only doing one flip, but imagine doing 30 at a time, right?
Wow.
Like, you have to be dialed in, and so that's why we had some of these tools and systems in place, because nobody can manage 30 projects, right? With everything being different. So when a lot of the consistencies were the same, it made it easier. And so our system worked and still works now. I still work that system because we're buying entry-level properties, right? So we're not doing high-end design like $1 million houses or things like that. When you get into that ballpark, then you do need more design, more customization, more uniqueness, more wow factors. But for the average person, they want a neutral house that it's clean, it looks presentable, nothing too crazy or too fancy out of the ordinary, and they're excited about that.
That's
right?
awesome.
And so we want to just deliver that, right? We don't want to over deliver something that, you know, the average buyers may or may not like or may not want.
So let's make a pit stop there really quick, because you're talking about like an entry level house. So one of the questions I wanted to ask today, anyways, happen to do with this, is like, what do you find yourself flipping most often? Is it townhomes? Is it condos? Are they single family residences? You know, do you have like a rule? Like, if it's an HOA, we can't go there because they're going to be all, you know, tight on what we can paint and do this and that. Like, what are some of those like things you do most often, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so there's definitely things that we avoid and things that we prefer, right? And so there's no 100% perfect house. The ideal house is detached house, you know, typically in the 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That is kind of the widest buyer pool that's going to buy that house on the back end. But we do try to avoid certain things because those kind of sway the potential value of the property. So some of those things might be like if the house doesn't have a garage, right?
Okay.
Every other house in that neighborhood has a garage, but this one doesn't. We might not buy it, or we may factor that it's going to sell for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 less because it doesn't have that feature. We'll avoid things like busy streets. So even though it's the same house, right, in the great neighborhood, being on a busy street will shrinking the buyer pool on the back end.
Gotcha.
So we're proactively thinking about the back end buyer after we're done flipping the house. Because imagine you buy a house on a busy street and you have kids and they like to play in the driveway. Well, that family's not going to buy that house because so now you just lost a really great family buying that house, and which means that the value of that house is potentially going to be less.
That makes sense.
It's not always the case, but for us, I know that that's a factor that that could sway the price 30, 40 grand, which is potentially the profit. And so I'd rather avoid that pitfall in most cases.
Smart.
That makes sense. I mean, you don't want to have those children. Have you seen those children little signs that they put out there like slow down?
Yeah. At our house, it's called Safety Steve.
There you go.
Like Safety Steve in the front yard.
Which brings me to the next questions, because I mean, you're so humble in how you present yourself and you do things. But you listen, Mike, I admire you in so many ways because you give back so much to the community. You're always educating people. You're always helping people elevate themselves and set their standards higher, and giving them that hope that they can do it. They can reach what you've accomplished, and that's what I love about you. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us.
Yeah,
but what is one of the strategies that you use to generate business?
Yeah. So the fact that you said that, I think it goes twofold. One, to the real estate team, but two, to the actual clients, right? And so I think all of that starts, and this is kind of the value prop, or maybe answering the question a little bit differently, but I think all of it starts with my mindset, right? And so I actually believe buying a house is great.
Yes.
Not only have I experienced that firsthand, but I know statistically that I saw a study recently that the National Association of Realtors put out. I think the study was done in 2021. I think it's the most recent study, though, that the average homeowner has approximately a $300,000 net worth in the country on average.
Yes.
While the average renter, their net worth is $8,000.
Yeah.
So
it was like nothing.
It's a 40 times multiple if you're a homeowner in net worth versus if you're a renter. And so just knowing that statistic, I believe that it's good to buy a house over a long period of time, because I'd rather be in the homeowner statistic than in the renter statistic.
And we recently did a show where we were looking at home equity, and it was like on average, national home equity was $300,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we were talking about how, that means that someone has $200,000, someone's got $500, someone has $800,000 equity, and someone has 50. But that's different when you are on the ownership side of the conversation versus the renting side, 100%.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, these are facts, but the only way to accumulate wealth is by I'm sorry. The only way to have wealth is to accumulate wealth. And how do you do that? There you go. That's what I meant. Pardon.
No, I agree. And so to answer the question, for me, it actually starts with belief for me, and that's how I generate business, right? Because I have to believe in what I'm doing, and I have to know that whatever I'm doing is going to help that person in the long run, even if they don't believe it or not. And so I'll share a story. Yesterday, we did a client appreciation event at Dave & Buster's. So excuse my voice. That's why I'm a little bit raspy. We're literally there for like 6 hours.
Were you playing guitars here or something?
We're playing everything, to be honest. But I was, that we had about 100 past clients come between me and my team to Dave & Buster's.
Oh, that's awesome.
And, there's a few of my clients that we were having like some separate conversations with. And one of my clients, I won't mention their name, but they bought a house about 4 years ago.
Gotcha.
And they bought that house somewhere, I don't remember the exact number, somewhere around $750,000, give or take a little bit. And believe it or not, their house is like over 3,000 square feet, 3-car garage. Their driveway could fit like 8 cars.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and they were telling the story to some of the other clients that they had just met. And basically the verbiage that I use, and they remember it very well, is like, is something along the lines of, well, if you could afford to buy like the perfect house right now and like everything panned out and worked and you fell in love with the house, like, would you move forward? And they said, well, yeah. And so I found them the perfect house and they bought it. And the cool thing about that story is, fast forward 4 years, right? Yeah. They have like $400,000 in equity. And so it's like, they're very grateful that they took my advice to buy a house. They were in a great position to do it. So obviously this is their credit, right? They bought the house,
That's
not me.
awesome.
But I sparked that conversation with them. And because of that, they're
That's awesome.
almost $500,000 richer because they made a choice, right? And they were in a position to, but they made the choice to move forward.
And this goes to something we talk about all the time. It's like, you have to live somewhere. I mean, everyone requires shelter. So they're either going to rent or they're going to buy. You're going to buy wherever the market's at and whatever you can afford. And so it really sometimes it's just an advocacy of just do it. Just go do the thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to be thankful for it in the end. It might be in 4 years. It might be in 10 or 12. It could be as quick as 3 months, depending on what it is. But
that's that's just great, Mike. I mean, that's a great story, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're out there and saying, Mike, thank you for getting me in the biggest debt of my life.
Yeah.
And they're happy. They showed up at Dave and Buster's. You guys had a good time. And now they're telling the other people, go get in debt.
Yeah, go buy some more houses. Yeah.
That's because you did it the right way.
Yeah.
Again, it all
But
comes.
it's also like understanding what does the other side of the coin look like? What if they didn't buy and then they just rented for $3,000 a month for 4 years?
Right.
$3,000, that's $36,000 a year times 4 years.
144.
That's 144,000. Math, math's not. You don't have to be smart to be a real estate agent. And like that they could have been negative 144,000 instead of positive 400,000 or 500,000.
Well,
that's the other side.
Yeah.
And they'll be buying that house today at 1.1 million or
Exactly.
1.25. So they're not at 750 anymore.
That's
You're
awesome.
At 1.25.
Yeah.
So speaking of
because
real,
I know the both sides, right?
Yeah.
Like, then I believe even more. Like I helped that person, right?
Yeah.
I contributed to their
That's awesome.
overall net worth and success in the long run.
no, that's
job.
awesome. So
Good job.
would you say this is one of your best stories of, since you've been conducting real estate?
That's definitely one of the good ones, right? And
Yeah.
especially those clients are amazing and they're good friends of mine. And so like obviously
That's
they
awesome.
listened to me, they trusted me, and they were hesitant at first,
Yeah.
just like most buyers are, right? It's a big purchase, big decision.
Absolutely.
And yet that story came out positive so far in the end.
Which brings me to the next question. Moving forward into 2024, what's your prediction and what would be the advice to like a new homeowner, a new investor that's looking into flipping? What would be that advice that you'd actually give them?
Yeah, so new homeowner for sure, I would say definitely take the right action steps to move forward, right? And understand what that game looks like in the long run, right? Don't have such a short-term thinking mindset because a lot of people are so caught up in the current interest rate. And believe it or not, our team does a lot of deals and it never comes up in any of our trainings, in any of our conversations, because for me, interest rate doesn't really matter.
I like that.
And so I think that's why we've continued to grow and accelerate, because we focus on the things that we can control. I focus specifically on the things I can control. I can't control the interest rates, but I can control how much time I spend getting better, right? Working on my scripts, becoming a better agent, being able to explain things better to my clients. And, because of that, we're able to keep things moving forward. So prediction wise, do I believe interest rates are going to come down? Well, we've seen that in the last few weeks already.
Yeah.
So I do, and yet it doesn't matter to me either way.
Sure.
Because what I trained, especially for my team, and what I've adopted a long time ago is, focus on the things that you can get better at. And so don't wish things were easier. Don't wish the market was easier, the interest rates were better, the outside world was easier. Just wish you were better. Wish you got better. So that I take that advice for myself when it comes to training and building the business, but also for my clients, right? I want them to become smarter, become better with their money, and know how to use it, know what to look for down the road. And if you become better, then you know how to pivot, whether the interest rates are high or low or whatever the case is, because you became smarter.
That's excellent, man.
And I have to think that some of those same things are those same qualities you'd recommend to somebody who is thinking about, okay, I already own a home, but maybe I do want to flip a house, or maybe I want to go buy and hold something. Like, what would what would you tell them like to assess upfront in order to make the best decision to decide to start flipping a house, or just flip one? Let's not do 120 once or 30 all at the same time, 120 in a year. But how can someone know if they are ready to take that next step into becoming a property investor or to becoming a home flipper?
Yeah, I think the real estate investing world is attractive, right? So people like what it could potentially do. But I would say figure out what is the actual goal, right? What is the objective? If it's to make a certain amount of cash in a fairly short period of time, and maybe flipping a house is a good avenue to go down. But if it's to generate long-term cash flow or have depreciation or write-offs or things, then maybe the rental property long-term. You have to look at the big picture, right? Because the rental property, especially if you're buying in San Diego, it may produce negative cash flow, right? And yet that's just one part of the equation. You have to look at the big picture.
That's awesome.
Well, how much are you writing off? Are you doing cost segregation? Are you depreciating that? Are you adding value over time? Are you building an ADU, right? There's a lot of other factors. And so I think the ultimate idea is to figure out what is the goal and objective first, and then figure out the investment strategy or sales strategy, because I don't think flipping houses is actually investing in real estate. So figure out that strategy.
Well, because there's a
and implement that.
transactional, it's 100%
It is
transactional component.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an open sale, closed sale. That's not an investment.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's buying and
So-
selling.
Would you mind sharing some of your goals for 2024?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I have some
since
crazy
we're already
goals.
there, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yesterday was interesting. I was hearing, I went to one of my good buddies, Chris. He was talking on stage, and he's hung around with a couple billionaires, right? And what he was saying some of these people, the way they strategize is they don't think like I'm a person that I think, what am I going to do next year? You know, I don't think about the other year next to that. These people are thinking, what am I going to do in the next 40 years?
Right.
What do I want? And yet this man was 87 years old. And Chris asked him, like, how are you thinking 40, 50 years? And his thing was, I'm just here to make a difference in the amount of time that I have in this world.
Yeah.
And I want to make it a better place.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy. So saying that, what's your goal for 2024?
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. You know,
Right? I
maybe
I wanted to share that.
You know, 2024, and I kind of project 1, 3, 5 years in advance to almost reverse engineer what do we need to do and how do we get to that big objective. But for 2024, we definitely have some big goals, especially for the real estate team. Currently, we're sitting at 15 agents on the team, and so our goal is to scale that up, agent count wise, to 30 agents. But more importantly, is to create a lot more success within our organization. And so my goal within those 30 agents is to have at least half of them earning a 6-figure income or more. And that's because that shows proof that our system works for a lot of people, right? Fortunately, we've been able to have a handful of people hit that objective already in 2023. And so we want to, especially for me, I want to dial that in and make it duplicatable for the people that want to reach those types of results. And so with that kind of larger scale goal, right? If you can extrapolate that, right, with 30 agents, half of them making at least $100,000 or more per year. Some of them are already doing double that on the team now. And so that's a lot of production.
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is.
You do the math. And so there's a lot of byproducts that come from that, right?
I like that.
And so we're going to be doing some unique things with the team. I don't know when this is airing, but maybe I'll share it right now.
Yeah.
And by the time the team knows, because they don't know some of it yet, maybe it'll be okay. So we're going to be doing some like team type of trips. We try to do some type of team event every other month. And so we've done jet skis, we've done escape rooms, we've done Dave and Buster's and those types of things. And yet I'm big on experience, right? You guys both know me more on the personal side. I've been to 36 countries and like we're not stopping now, right? We love traveling and experiencing, and I want to give that gift to more people that I know. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give some more gifts of experiences for the people that earn it and deserve it.
That's super cool.
And some of it we'll do together, some of it they can do on their own. So we're building in some of that into the team that pretty much I haven't really seen done before. I've seen teams and other organizations go on incentive trips or production trips and things like that. But the way that I'm doing it, it's going to be a little bit different. And the way that I'm rolling it out, and again, I don't know when this is going to air, so hopefully it's not this week. But next week we have our team holiday dinner. And so there's about 32 people attending that team because we're allowing spouses and some others. And so in that dinner, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have the like an awards kind of section of the dinner. And then we're going to do the people that have hit a certain tier. They're each going to have a laptop on their section because we're in a restaurant. And so it's like we have to use what we got. And so they're each going to open a laptop. You guys are the only ones that know this, by the way.
Okay,
they're
that's
going to
cool.
open the laptop and a video is going to play.
Wow.
And the video is an experience, but they're not going to know exactly why they're watching that video. And then at the end, they're going to get to experience that experience.
Cool.
That is sick.
And it's...
So this will air after this has already happened.
Yeah.
So that
and it's in my... I haven't even experienced that, so I'm going to experience that
That's
with
super
them.
cool.
And so it's a really... I mean, again, I've been to a lot of places. This place is... another level of experience. And so I want to reward the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into their business, into their clients, but also they trusted me to partner with them and work with them to help them build and get to their goals.
And again, Mike, I mean, thank you for sharing all that, but what's there not to trust from you when you're putting the time into it? I know you're very humble, right? So I'm going to unhumble you because you put time into people. You put time into your team, and I see that you're always giving day in, day out. And that's what actually makes a true leader like yourself. So I think by giving that experience and you putting yourself on what they're going to like, it's just amazing. So
Yeah.
since I can't reach over you, pat yourself on the back for
No,
that
I
one.
appreciate that, but I would say that what we're intending to do and what we're doing is building a type of organization that I just wanted to be a part of, right? And I attempted to do that twice already with the other organizations,
Yeah.
and they were amazing. And don't get me wrong, I had really great experiences. I wouldn't be as sharp and talented and smart
Right.
as I am now without being around Anthony for 3
Yeah,
years and
that's right.
around the investment company for 3 years.
Yeah.
So they get a lot of that credit, and yet they didn't fulfill some of the things that I wanted to.
Correct.
So at this point, I just decided
This is-
to
yeah.
do it myself and build something that I would want to be a part
awesome.
of if I were them. And so because of that, we're implementing obviously training and tools and systems, but then also the experience side of things. I
rad.
think it makes it more fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question though, on the humbleness side, right? Like I only believe in those two things, systems and people. And I know if I pour into the people build the business.
Yeah.
And so, and it's my business, right? So instead of me building the business, I just pour into the people and then the people build the business. And
Nice,
so
I
then we
like
all
that.
win, right? I can not have anybody on the team and I can just be a solo agent, produce and
Yeah.
probably be fine, right? Make a good living.
Yeah.
And yet that's cool for me. What about all the other friends and all the other people that want another level?
One
of,
in.
you know, so like now I have to create something. I feel obligated to create
Yeah.
something for them
That's rad.
to give them an opportunity to do the same. 'Cause
Nice.
some of them are just like me, but 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They're hungry. They're trying to figure it out. Where do I go next? How do I do something? And
They
so-
may be finding you at the point in which you found Anthony. When
Well,
Anthony
yeah.
was like, "Hey, I'm looking for this kind of person," you're like, "Hey, that's me. I want that job."
Yeah.
And they might be coming to you now, going, "Hey, I want that job that you
Yeah,
have." And I can already see it out here when we're talking to people and we're interacting with your team. I can already see that. But before I forget to ask, how do people reach you? How is it you? Well, first question: how do you want to be reached? And then which things should people be reaching you for?
Yeah, I would say the easiest is probably on Instagram.
Okay.
And so you can follow me at Mike Blair Realty. And the reason why that's easiest is because number one, I can like see who you are and like understand what you might need based on your profile and things like that.
Nice.
I get a lot of random calls and texts and like that. It's kind of a blind
Yeah.
thing, and so that doesn't help me as much. And it probably doesn't help you to do that. So Instagram is probably the easiest right now. And what I'm looking for, or
What should people reach you for? Like,
Yeah.
what would be a good from their end? What would be helpful for them to reach out to you
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of multifold. So one is if you're a buyer, seller, or investor,
Yeah.
and you're looking to figure out how to either obtain that next property or sell that next property or invest in real estate, that is a great reason to reach out to me.
Nice.
If you're an investor, especially, and you're looking to try to figure out how to scale up, one of my consulting clients is actually a really successful investor already,
Yeah.
but they haven't really broken the code of how to scale up a little bit more. And so I'm kind of stepping in as almost a consultant, integrator type of role for them.
Wow.
Even though for most people outside looking in, it seems like we're competitors. Like there's thousands
there's
of
enough.
thousands of like I can't buy everything like that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just adding more value and helping them. So if you're that type of person, then maybe I can help you with that. And then if you're a real estate professional, whether you're an agent, a wholesaler, want to be an agent, or looking to make calls or whatever, get involved in this industry, then I'm probably a good person to reach out to for that.
Wow,
That's awesome.
Lots
That's
of
awesome.
Great things to reach Mike for.
Yeah, exactly. He's multifaceted there.
Yeah.
So, is there any questions you felt we didn't ask you that we should have?
Not necessarily. I think it was great.
All right.
I appreciate you guys asking the
Well, of
questions.
course.
He even answered what I was going to ask. I was
Yeah.
going to say, tell everyone how many countries you've been to. He already said it.
36. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, Mike, I applaud you for all your success. I applaud you for giving back and making a difference in people's lives. Little do they know that once a year passes by, 2 years, they're going to have aha moments, those breakthroughs that, damn, I'm glad I stuck with it.
Yeah.
And the great thing, again, they have a champion there to help them champion themselves through these things. So, again, I applaud you, and I'm just so happy for your success, and I'm just so honored that, we get to talk on a daily basis, and, we appreciate you coming out to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thank you all for watching the Friends of Mortgage Hero show. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if something we talked about today is of interest to people in your life that you know and love, be sure to send them this video. And while you're subscribing to the channel, turn on notifications so you catch every single episode. And if you have not yet checked out the Friends of Mortgage Heroes playlist here on YouTube, go ahead and check that out, where we have have a lot of other professionals that we know, trust, love, have known for a very long time, talking about their specific part of the industry and how it can help you win in mortgage and real estate. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us for this show, and thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Peace.